morning. Hey, come on, guys. I thought you're all startups bubbling with energy and you get a very, very low sort of response back. Are you guys excited with what TK and Prashant talked about in terms of the SaaS market? Really sort of wanting to get away from this program and start really money-paying customers. You think it's a waste of time to spend the next, good. That's a great stuff. So let me sort of try and see what I really wanted to share over the next 30 minutes. Because one, I think I'm more comfortable with businesses because that's what I've been doing over the last 30 plus years, really selling to large enterprises. But like TK rightly said, I think there's a dramatic change happening in the way in which many of us have seen the business, and I think we are ourselves struggling to change ourselves. So I just wanted to share some perspectives in terms of how do I see enterprises changing and what is really going to be the opportunity ahead for many of you in the audience now. I really start with the first premise saying that the enterprise of the future is very different from what you have seen in the past. And the reason is technology is no more just an enabler. It's not just helping enterprises run their businesses more efficiently, but technology is becoming the business itself. And the reasons for those are really what I see as four drivers. One, I think more and more of the products or services which enterprises are delivering to end customers is becoming more and more customized, which means you really need to start thinking of a consumer as almost a segment itself. Which really has huge implications because you're not trying to service a mass of people. You're really trying to serve the needs of that individual consumers, which is why I think mobility as a solution is really becoming a big theme. Or for that matter, how a company like Airbnb has entirely changed the way in which people think of travel and where do they stay and so on. Now, but it's not just the product or service which is becoming very individualized, but your channels are also becoming digital. How many of us have gone to a physical bank over the last 5-6 years, or for that matter, any physical form of service which you use? So the channels are also becoming much more digital. And the third point is really what TK talked about. I think data is really becoming an asset for organization, and it's no more what you call the traditional data warehouses where you put in data, you're trying to understand what happened, which is really a very reactive way of looking at data because you're trying to analyze data and really see what you could do. But it is really becoming more real time. So your decisions are really data-driven decisions. And beyond that, I think every enterprise is thinking in terms of how do I digitize my process? How do I get efficiencies, not just incremental efficiencies, but can I get efficiencies which are 50x better than what I used to do? Again, just to give you a very local example, many of us had seen HDFC Bank really sort of talk in terms of online customer loans in 10 seconds. The fact is, would they have even imagined making such a customer promise a few years back? Definitely not. But today, that's an experience which their customers sort of thrive on. But if you get into the next level of, or remove the hoods behind it, HDFC is not doing it alone. Sitting behind that is a technology built by a Bangalore-based startup called Perfios, which is really powering the way in which HDFC is able to do an online customer appraisal, credit scoring, as well as approving a loan in 10 seconds flat. So it is partnership, it is digitization of process where you're expecting quantum improvements in efficiency. And that has huge implications for service providers like us. Because one, we were very much an order-taking industry. Very much the customers used to tell us, you know what, do this. And we, like TK said, we did a great job of building people, creating capacity and just delivering. But today, I think we need to have a very different mindset of thinking about what the digital strategy of our customers should be, what is their migration plan, and how do you really help them do a stage investment? Because it's not that they can just drop what is there and just move along. It has big implications in terms of understanding enterprise architectures. What is it going to be in the future? And how are we going to work along with customers to make that? We need to change our delivery discipline entirely. We are very used to a CMM type of model where process is the king, and if the customer needs to wait for another 2 months because it completely adheres to the CMM level 5, I think those days are gone. I think many of us haven't even talked about CMM level 5 as a differentiator and why customers should deal with us for the past couple of years. So today you need to think in terms of agility, how quickly can you deliver to customers, and our people and skills are very different. We can no more just wait for the customer to tell us what to do. I think we need to go back to customers, give them some smart ideas in terms of why is it that they should be working with us. And for doing all of this, I think we need to leverage partnership in the digital ecosystem. So the transition in the enterprise of the future, where technology is no more an enabler, it's the business itself, has huge implications on service providers like my company. But the good part of it is, a lot of the spend is dramatically getting driven by software and services. Again, if you look at data, the percentage of capital spend which technology is accounting for, I think has increased dramatically. If you take a 30-year period, it's increased by almost 4x, which itself is great for all of us in this room. But the more interesting aspect is, if you look at what percentage of that change is driven by software and services, I think that itself gives you the answer, saying that I think the future is so good that the transition in terms of spends and the incremental spends which is happening both in software and services is substantive. So while enterprises are thinking of technology as a key element of their strategy, I think that is really driving more and more spend to really happen in software and services. And if you look at market sizes, I think they really talk the picture about. Today, enterprises spend about $2.7 trillion. The good part is, it is growing, and it's estimated to grow over the next 10 years at least at 3-4%. That itself is a positive news, because many of us probably see businesses which are declining in size. Many of us see businesses which are confined to maybe a very small segment of the market. The good part of technology spend is that it has no language, it has no culture. I think you can leverage your capabilities across the globe, and the good part is it's growing. But the growth is going to happen in a very different way from what we have traditionally seen. I think that's very important. I talked about digitization of process and how that's changing enterprises to think of quantum improvements in efficiency. That's also reflecting in terms of how their technology spends are. I think the move to digital technologies is going to shrink a part of the traditional spends. But certainly, enterprises are going to spend more and more in newer and newer areas of technology, particularly driven by digital technology. So this assessment, which I think was done by NASSCOM a couple of quarters back, estimates that by 2020, the current traditional spend in technology will only be 65% of what it is. Today, it's 90%, or last year it was 90% of what the spend was. So that itself is a big shift. 90% becoming 65% of what a traditional enterprise spend is. And the new spends, 35%, which is why digital technologies are going to grow at a CAGR of 30% over the next 4-5 years, and going to contribute to 80% of the incremental spend. So it's a very, very large opportunity which all of you are trying to address. And not only that, I think by 2025, 60% of enterprise spend is going to be digital in nature, which means what they're spending today, which is 90% of what they spend, is going to change dramatically and become 40%. So it's a huge opportunity which are really looking ahead. What is also driving this change is what IDC calls as the third platform. I think TK talked about how we have really seen the way in which enterprises leverage computing, and for many of us in the room who are probably on the wrong age, we have seen the first platform, the mainframe, where I think you really had a big, huge iron trying to process everything. And you really had millions of users, and people used to get astonished saying, how is it that such a large number of users can use applications? And you had typically thousands of applications. So in the early 90s, when client servers started getting popular, it became a big thing, saying, oh my God, I think now there can be millions of users. So access to mainframe is not restricted to us, but many people can use it. And consequently, applications also really became a large number. And in a way, to be honest, I think it helped the Indian IT services industry, because customers, after building a plethora of applications, had to maintain, sustain them. So the whole order taking business really grew, and then the ERPs came, implementation of ERP with service revenues 5x of what one spent on license really helped the industry grow. But I think today with mobile, big data, social and cloud, you're getting into a scenario where users are no more in millions of users, but we're thinking about billions of users. And the whole app ecosystem is really also expanding the millions of applications. And it's both a threat and an opportunity, because I think there would be niches which you can address, but how do you smartly get a money-paying customer to become a part of your growth journey is what I'll try and sort of share with you. So clearly the third platform, which is driven by mobility, cloud, social, is really driving the way in which there's a huge plethora of both applications as well as the number of users who use technology. And that is getting reflected in terms of the traditional IT spend. More and more of the enterprises with whom we deal with consistently are saying, hey, how do I shrink my spend in the legacy systems? How do I, if I'm spending 65, 70% of my IT budget in the legacy spend, can I reduce it next year to maybe 65%? Can I reduce it subsequent year to maybe think and bring it down below 50? Which is why you see that traditional spends are shrinking at 15 to 25% year on year, and it's consistent. And the estimates are that legacy spend will become probably 30-40% of what enterprises spend. So clearly the third platforms are going to get a larger percentage of share, which is where most of your platforms and offering are really going to be there. And the estimate is that the third platforms will almost contribute to 40% of what enterprises will spend over the next few years. And that's really leading to a big change in the way in which enterprises think of how they buy. If you look at traditionally, customers have looked at hardware, they've looked at software, then they get a service provider like us to really come and implement what is the software which they bought. That, I think, is moving away to customers really thinking in terms of more integrated purchases, where they think of where will they get infrastructure as a service and what is the SaaS platform which they'll use to solve a specific problem which creates very measurable business outcomes for that. And that change is really driving that as a service economy is growing much, much faster than what the traditional IT spend is. And the numbers are not small. We talked about enterprise spend growing at 3 to 4% maybe over the next 8 to 10 years. But as a service economy is growing by almost 5x the number of the total market growth, which itself is a great opportunity for us. And that's reflecting even in the traditional companies. If you look at the cloud-related services of what you could call the top technology companies, be it Microsoft or Oracle or IBM, all of which are what I call the pre-internet companies. Clearly, it is a big part of the business of a Google or a Facebook or so, but clearly even if you look at the so-called traditional companies, their share of cloud revenues has grown and is expected to become a much, much larger part. And amongst the public spend in cloud-related services, SaaS is clearly the highest. Almost 58% of the public-related spend in cloud is on SaaS services, and that's growing at a 20% CAGR. And obviously, when you look at the next level of where is it that there is opportunity, which are the segments which are mature. Clearly, infrastructure as a service, I think there's a lot more maturity coming in fast because there are large players. Today, I think so much is being talked about Amazon Web Services to Microsoft Azure to Google Cloud and probably IBM's cloud offering also. And that's really a play which I think is really for the large players because it involves huge capital investment, creating data centers, and so on. And that's maturing fast, which is equally true of the platform as a service economy because I think there are companies which are providing big data analytics platforms to, like TK pointed out, Workato, which is really providing a middleware for enterprise use. But the big opportunity is really in the area above that, which is really software as a service, where again, segments like CRM, which really were the first sort of SaaS plays. Today you'll see Anish talking about it on how he probably made a niche in terms of even a space like CRM where there is a certain level of maturity which has been reached. But there is a lot of other segments where I think there's still a huge opportunity for startups to leverage in terms of a large market size like this. So what I want to leave as a thought in this is I think the as a service economy is growing 5x than what the traditional IT spend is. But it's important for you to be focused in terms of where is it that you're going to really create and deliver value to customers. And that is really going to dictate in terms of how successful you're going to be. What you also need to think of is not just in terms of solving a problem, but how do you think of your products or services really as a platform? And more than anything else, start thinking about how is it that the shared economy is really helping platforms scale fairly significantly. I think we all have the examples of the automotive industry where today research shows that in the future, the number of people who are going to own cars is probably going to be lesser and people who are going to share their cars is going to increase. And in a large market like US, which I think talks about a 21 million vehicles sold every year, that's going to decline by 1.2 million. So it's not a small number in terms of decline. If you have a 3-4% decline in a market which consistently has been pretty high. So I think the notion of a platform and how that gets to scale because people are wanting to share and increase the usage of the platform is something which you need to always think about when you're building a product or a solution. Now, and even if you look at data in terms of how much of the cloud spending is driven by SaaS, early data clearly shows I think that's really taking a mainstream course. Obviously, there's a lot talked about how the public cloud spending is increasing year after year and still mature markets like US contribute substantively to the growth because both the infrastructure as well as the market awareness is very, very high. But within that, if you look at segments, clearly you still see that large part of the increase in cloud spending is driven by SaaS. And IDC has given this estimate saying that while they expect the SaaS market to grow by 20%, license market will decline by 1.7%, which in a way is great news for all of you because I think you're no more going to get, in a way, stopped by the existing players who have licenses and who have customers. Because the customer transition is really happening to the model of the future, which is really leveraging more and more SaaS services. So let's look at some of the characteristics of this. I think Prashant talked about vertical and horizontal SaaS. But this has to be looked at in the context of how do you anticipate the enterprise architecture of the future. We talked about technology being not just an enabler, but really the business itself. But when I look at enterprises, when we think in terms of how are they viewing this change, we see a lot of large organizations wanting to build platforms of their own, which really brings in both the differentiation as well as enhancing the customer experience to be a very core part of what they do. Which means while part of the spend is going to change to new areas, enterprises are going to own some part of that change, because that is very, very core to how they differentiate and win in the marketplace. So our view is that yes, enterprises more and more, as they use technology as a basis for differentiation, they are going to own something which is very core to their business, which is really what you have called platforms. It's also that the legacy and ERP systems are not going to go away. Even the estimates show that 40% of that spend is going to continue maybe 10 years from now. So you have to look at an enterprise architecture in the context that these two are given, that customer is going to own a very key part of what they believe is their differentiation and their ability to win in the marketplace, and the existing applications and technology which run their business. On top of it is really going to be horizontal SaaS, be it CRM or maybe an accounts payable system or a travel and expense claim system like Concur. And there's going to be a huge opportunity for vertical SaaS. You could be solving a fairly narrow niche application for him. But if you've configured that solution in the context of making it a platform and leveraging the whole notion of a shared economy, I think you can certainly hit scale even in those businesses. Without naming names, in fact, I've been sort of working with a few startups, and since we always talked about India being a great opportunity for this, there are, in fact, not just one, but multiple of the Indian SaaS B2B companies, which are really addressing this notion of a platform and leveraging the shared economy, and are seeing early success. And in fairly narrow areas like logistics. A lot is talked about GST and how things are going to change and how we are going to become one uniform market. But that again is really exploding the need for technology solutions, because I've been dealing with a few companies which are involved in the logistics of intercity movement of goods, because I think that's going to become far more possible in the new thing. But what they're primarily leveraging is a technology platform which will manage both supply and demand. They're leveraging on the whole notion of a shared economy. No more you think in terms of just hiring full trucks, but can you think of when you're moving goods from Delhi to Kolkata, think in terms of just hiring 1/3 of a truck, both in terms of volume and size. And can you use the shared economy to really leverage efficiency and asset utilization of the whole thing? And already they're seeing good traction in terms of the market, and they're changing the paradigm, because both the scale of the platform as well as leveraging the need for a shared economy is really going to drive. And that's equally true once the good reaches the edge of the city. The way in which infrastructure within our cities is just not going to enhance. So every city has an operating guideline that you can't bring in big trucks into the city. So the bulk has to be broken. So there are startups which are working on technology platform which really focuses on small trucks, which does both volume optimization as well as demand-based sort of transportation. But with the fundamental notion that even a ACE truck can be shared by maybe smaller players who just don't have the capability to hire, as well as provide it as a SaaS offering to existing customers who have invested in infrastructure like owning their own trucks to leverage the asset utilization much better. So I think these are going to be the models of the future, where you're really addressing a key problem which is going to deliver demonstrable business value to the customer. But platforms which are built to scale, because I think you're bringing in elements of both the network effect as well as really realizing the need for a shared economy. Yeah. So you need to be very focused in terms of where is it that you're going to play. Are you going to really be a play in terms of a horizontal SaaS, or are you really addressing a problem which is going to be vertical in nature, which then delivers that benefit to the customer? And how do you really go about going to the market for that? What I do believe is, while the market is large, I talked about a $4 trillion market where existing spends are going to decline, and that's going to move to newer and newer technology spends, which is more aligned to what you're going to do. But the buyer ecosystem is clearly changing. I think TK talked about it in terms of how the CIO alone is not going to be the buyer, but you're going to walk across a different group of people, maybe several business users are going to do. And if you juxtapose on top of the third platform which I talked about, today's enterprise buyer is really flooded by a large number of startups, and any niche area, even if you're solving, I think there'll be 20 other startups which are trying to do the same. So by just running an email campaign to say, you know what, we do a great job, every email campaign will look the same. So I don't think you ever will get even a part sort of thing or attention of the buyer, because there are so many people really pinging them. Which is why it's very important to partner with probably an IT services player. And I'll come back in the later part to say why is that today for IT services players it's very important to partner. Because I think it significantly, while it increases your distribution, I think it also makes your sales pitch far more effective rather than just trying to build something on your own. Clearly, which leads to the next point, that customers do not want to deal with a large number of players. If they've already been working for a decade with a service provider, they're comfortable enough if they bring in a partner and sort of take the role of saying that, you know what, we'll ensure that we will be the program management and we will deliver that value to you. Yeah. The third thing is, all of which works within the existing enterprise landscape. So you will need capabilities to link up with the legacy systems. You will need the ability to talk to the existing applications, which the existing enterprise vendor understands far better than you. So I think you'll get a far easier ability to sort of implement it if you partner with IT services providers. And the last element is, as a startup, I think you need to be constantly thinking in terms of how is it users are using your product, what are the new insights which you get as they start using. And these will come to you as you engage with the partner, because the objectives are aligned. The objectives are aligned in terms of saying, how do I continuously enhance my product? How do you make the experience for the customer a lot more exciting and the ability for them to use it better? So I would think, while the market is large and there are huge opportunities, it is almost imperative that you start thinking of a partnership approach. So let me sort of share with you what I see are 5 tips of working with IT services providers. Because let me tell you, it's a very frustrating experience. Absolutely frustrating experience, because you will go and meet some key guys who will say, you know what, this is the most exciting thing and I'll link you up with my head of retail and they'll do all the thing. You'll continue to send mails. You'll, after some time, realize that it's probably easier to send a mail to a prospective customer and get a response. Whereas many of these people are, I sometimes jokingly tell my people, busyness is not equivalent to business. But all of them are always so busy that they don't have the time to respond or really take it on to the next stage. So it's very important to get access to the client-facing team. So one simple tip which I'll give you is, while you get connected to maybe the head of the vertical segment or something, really try and zero in on specific customers where you think you will be able to deliver that value, and start linking up with that client-facing teams. Because those guys are the guys who are facing the customers, and customers are asking them the question, saying, what is the new conversation which you're having with me? What is the new exciting thing which you're telling me? So they don't have an answer for that, so they'll really see you as a great help in doing it. It's very important to be very specific on the value proposition which you're offering, which is where I feel that many times startups fail, because you try to be everything to everybody. So with the startups which I work, I always have this discipline of saying, you just tell me in 40 words, what is the value proposition you're delivering to the customer? I make them write it, I make them sort of redo it, because it must become very simple. We all talk about the elevator pitch, but let me tell you, many times when I ask for an elevator pitch, it goes on and on and on. Nobody has the time. Let me tell you, we're all in an information overloaded world. If you're not crisp in terms of your value proposition, if you're not to the point, nobody has the time to keep going through a huge PowerPoint presentation which you send. The third thing which I would certainly urge you is once you see an opportunity, engage as early as possible in the pre-sale cycle, because you're pretty much deep in terms of understanding of how you're solving the problem. The same level of depth will not be there with the partner organization. So it's important that you engage yourself early in the pre-sale cycle. The fourth point is incentivize your sales team to work along with them, because as startups, you don't understand how to work with a partner. Many times your client-facing teams will see them as a threat. So it's important to incent them to say, you know what, let's make the first 5 deals with Wipro, and this is what you're going to see as a win when you get those customers into the cycle. And lastly, I think enterprise sales is still, there's no science to it. While there's a lot of science which people talk about, each enterprise is unique in the way in which they buy products and services. So you have to be patient. While I understand that deal sizes in SaaS are small, you need to think in terms of quicker sales process and closing a larger number of deals. I think in the early stage of a partnership, you need to be patient. Maybe results may not come for 6 months, may not come for 12 months, but you need to be patient. So these, I think, are 5 tips which I think are important in the context of if you think it's critical to target this large growing market, and a partnership approach with IT service providers is important for you to get a foothold in the market. These are just 5 tips which I thought I'd leave. But let me come back to the last part of the presentation when I say that while many companies which have been startups have attempted partnership with IT services companies, it's never worked. I don't have an example in the last maybe 10, 15 years where partnerships have really worked, and both the companies have said, you know what, this is the best thing we did. But today, I think it's a little different, because I think more than anything, the IT services providers need you as partners. And let me tell you why it is. Because the fundamental way in which IT services providers have engaged with their customers, I think that needs to change. Because till now, we were really involved with driving efficiency for our customers, because we either used to take over some of their existing applications and give them cost efficiency of 20-30% and do it with better quality, or build new things for them at a lower cost. So we're very much in the core business. But today, customers are demanding that, can you sort of co-create new products and services with us? And again, coming back to my very favorite theme of just being order taking, many of us are not ready for it. We don't have elements of that innovation to tell a customer, saying that, you know what, this is what I think you need to be doing. So, but that's becoming a real need for the customer. How do you really co-create with them? And we are constantly looking for ideas where we can go and pitch a smart idea to a customer. Clearly, customers are expecting us to do moonshots, where there is a new idea, they want us to co-invest and see how well that can become some part of maybe a new line of business or a new product or service which they deliver into the marketplace. So as we extend our engagement with our customers, both to co-creation and co-innovation, we need partnerships, people who can bring those smart ideas which we can then take to the customers. So if the engagement with our customers was on a model in the past, I think in the future, we are clearly going to need people who are in the room to make ourselves relevant to our customers. Because in a way, I see it as a survival issue for us. Which then leads me to what I call a commercial break. When I say commercial break, it's what Mindtree is doing about really trying to address this. Normally, I think one shouldn't be talking about what we do, but I thought a little bit of what we are doing in this space is also important. Like I said, we think it's not just a nice to have, we think it's actually a survival issue for us if we need to be relevant to our customers, that we need to partner with the existing thing. And we really think we don't have the capability to help a startup in the early stage when you're really trying to get to your minimum viable product. Is the idea at all feasible? Will there be money paying customers? I don't think we have any great capabilities to help you in that space. As an individual, many times I do that, but certainly as an organization, we don't have the capability to do that. And I think the ecosystem is fairly strong. Today, I think we have a thriving ecosystem of angels. There are accelerators which have come up, which really help you do that. Clearly, from a minimum viable product to get to your first 1 or 2 customers, also I think there's enough help within the ecosystem. But what we do believe is many times you've identified a problem, you've got the first 1 or 2 customers. To get to scale, that's where we see a lot of organizations fail. You've got your first 2 customers, then probably you're not as focused in terms of trying to get to maybe customer 10 to customer 20, which is really setting up your business to be a more sustainable, predictable, and scale business. That is where I think we are really wanting to play with. So for the last 18 months, we've been engaged in this exercise. We've probably engaged with maybe 200 plus startups trying to see how they can add value in the context of how we talk to customers. And I must say, based in terms of what I said, we right now work with 5 of them. So the number is probably very, very small compared to where we started to what we come. But I think we have learned a lot in the context in terms of what is it that makes a partnership work where it is a value add to both the IT services provider as well as the startup. So that's really the space in which we work on. And what is it that we gain now, or what is it we bring to the table? Many times we bring mentorship because we bring in business leaders who built multi-billion-dollar businesses who can come and give you a thing in terms of what is it which will work in a go-to-market situation, what is it which will work in an enterprise sales situation, and what will not. Clearly, we can give access to customers, but there again, I'll go back to my tip of saying be very focused in terms of who's the customers who want to access. Rather than going after a broad segment, saying that we'll go after retail companies which have revenues of greater than $5 billion, be very specific in terms of who's the customer who you want to target, what is the value proposition that you're going to do. And the third element is really access to the digital workforce of tomorrow. Many times the companies with whom we work with, they suddenly need probably a data scientist to do something for a client which is very important. So they access our talent. So I think these are the elements where we can bring in value: mentorship, access to customers, as well as access to the next generation talent. And what is it we gain? We certainly gain because we are taking in new conversation to our customers. We are really demonstrating that we are bringing in all the value of an open system of innovation which we are chasing. We're getting to them point solutions because many times we may just be solving a transactional problem for the customer with a unique innovative solution. Clearly, we build leadership because we expose our leaders to a fairly complex market situation. And how is it that they are able to help the startup scale in terms of business? So it's a great way of building leadership within the company. And all of this leads us to really generating thought leadership both within our customers and in the ecosystem in which we work with. So we gain a lot from this. So what I really wanted to leave as a thought is, while I think the market is large, you need to think of how are you going to really profit from the large market. You need to do it smartly, which is where I think a partnership approach works. And a partnership approach will not work because of serendipity. It will really happen because you really want to deliver some outcomes. You're really going after them in a very thoughtful manner. And it has never been before that IT services provider needed the support of people like you. I think that's really what you need to leverage on. It's no more just a question of saying, okay, let me have another partnership and, like KK rightly said, a logo on both the thing. It is really a question of differentiation and survival for many of the current IT services companies. So with that, let me sort of summarize saying, well, I said digital technologies is changing the way enterprises think of technology. I think many of the enterprises with whom we deal with want to work with partners who bring in very different innovation, which is where I think many of you in the room will really play a key role. And the diverse needs of our customers really need a well thought through partnership approach, which is what I think you need to start thinking about. So I know I'm almost running out of time. I'd like to sort of end with the thing saying that many times I always think, why am I not younger? The reason why I think why I'm not younger is there's such an incredible opportunity ahead. I must be honest, sometimes I feel, you know what, I should be 20 years or 30 years younger. Let me sort of, when I ask, I might as well ask for a bigger number. It's such a great opportunity today. And I think we're all really scratching just the tip of it. I think there's tremendous opportunity, the market is great, and all of us can profit from the market. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you, Prashant, for calling me.